Today, we preview the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays with Keegan Matheson from MLB.com. You're listening to the Bucko Banter podcast, brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue the music.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plate, sending case after case. Run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snake.
Welcome back to another team preview. Today we've got the Toronto Blue Jays, and we're joined by Keegan Matheson of MLB.com. Keegan, welcome on the Bucko Banner.
I appreciate you having me, fellas. Happy to be here.
Let's talk Blue Jays baseball. Last year, 74-88, fifth in the AL East. This division is an uphill battle. They had a decent offseason. Let's go through it. Then I want to get your grade, see how this possibly puts them at the top of the East or if they're going to compete this year. We got Max Scherzer, Anthony Santander. We got Tony Taters there. Jeff Hoffman, Josh Walker, Yimi Garcia. And then you got Amir Garrett on a minors deal, Ryan Yarbrough on a minors deal. And then via trade, we added Miles Straw, Andres Jimenez, Nick Sandlin. And then we lost Jordan Romano, Dylan Tate, Genesis Cabrera. And then Brandon, via free agency, you lost. Then via trade, Brandon Eisert, Brett DeGuss, who had a stint here with the Pirates for a hot minute, Spencer Horwitz, current Bucko, and Nick Mitchell. How are we feeling about this offseason? What grade can you give it, and is this enough?
I think it's a B offseason. I think it's a fine, okay offseason, and nobody's going to care because they didn't extend Vladdy. That's all it comes down to in Toronto, and that's that's all anybody cares about this spring is the future of Vladdy. And I think real soon, once Bo Bichette reminds people what type of ball player he is, that's what they're going to care about too, because otherwise, I liked the moves enough. Yeah, I always think the Blue Jays are a team that could take more risks, but the moves they do make, they don't tend to whiff too often. Now, the Miles Straw trade, this isn't a commentary on Miles Straw. It's I don't want him to catch a stray, but making that move in an attempt to get Roki Sasaki, then not getting Roki Sasaki, was just a massive blunder. Like, that was a screw up. No way around it. But when you look at other moves the Blue Jays make, man, they normally come out on the right side of it. Even when they're spending big money on pitching, yeah, George Springer, the last 2 years might not be what you love, but they were supposed to have done something by now. So when I look at the moves the Blue Jays made this offseason, Santander headlining that, Jimenez at the top as well, I like the moves. It's just tough to frame them around any sort of future. Max Scherzer being another really good move, I think, if he's healthy. But it's all about this year. Next year, is Anthony Santander the face of a weird team? Like, maybe. Right. It's going to a strange place with this team. So the moves themselves, I think, were solid because the team itself is solid enough. It kind of matches who this organization is. But there's going to be a but after everything. There's going to be a but after everything all season long because it's all coming back to Vladdy.
You know, I think as a Blue Jays fan, you could say they're definitely in on a lot of these big names. I don't want to hang the banner for trying for all the big name free agents, but at the same time, they definitely have done so. You've heard them connected to Shohei. You've heard them connected to Roki Sasaki this offseason. They were going hard after some bats. Even Juan Soto, their name was mentioned. Is that a product of being in the AL East? I mean, I feel like if you put this team in the AL Central, like on paper, you're probably betting on a Bo Bichette bounce back. Like last year was not Bo Bichette. Could this the aggressiveness they show is probably a product of their division, is it not?
You have to hang up there, man. And ownership is spending. Now their ownership is Rogers Communications, which up here in Canada, that's like our version of AT&T or Verizon or something. It's a telecoms company. And like all of those things, they've got serious cash and they're spending it, man. They're spending at record levels for this organization. And Toronto's a big market, man. In Major League Baseball, it should be a top 5 market. It's a huge market. Then you expand it to the country. We're talking 40 million people. What's that? California, it's a massive market. So the Blue Jays are spending like they should have been. This entire organization wasted a lot of years acting like baseball's little brother. 10, 15, 20 years ago. It was a waste of time. Now they're doing what they should do money-wise, and you've got to, because New York and Boston are going to do that. Baltimore's loaded up with young talent. They're going to be good. The Rays are at least going to be annoying, maybe good. So you've got to do that. You've got to spend if you're the Blue Jays. And they've been in on a lot of dudes they've just missed out on, but beats what it used to be in Toronto. Being the team that you had to pay guys extra to come to, extra years, extra cash to drag them over the border. I think that's lessened in terms of being a factor. Yeah, some guys aren't dying to come to Canada, but some guys aren't dying to go to Texas or to a bigger market. You know, it's all preference. So they've had to be in on all of those conversations. And in doing that, they've proven that they have financial resources to even go beyond where they are now, guys. And the word budget's really stopped meaning anything to me at this point. Once you start chasing Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto up into the 700 millions, budget doesn't mean much. It's you can have a rough one. And Vladdy's probably saying the same thing. Vladdy's probably sitting at home saying, hell yeah, like go after those dudes, get that number jacked up. So they are trying to be at the top. Again, trying doesn't get you very far. But it's hard to, and guys, I've struggled, frankly, with how to frame this because you don't want to hand out the participation trophy. Nobody cares. But trying's better than not. So eventually they're going to land one of these guys, but it hasn't happened in time, you know, because everything's been about lining it up with Bo and Vladdy. Well, it's the last year. So it's a tough conversation, tough window to try to line up.
Scott, no budget. Can you imagine?
Oh, man. Not in Pittsburgh.
Big spend Buccos. Come on now.
Yeah, no budget is wild. Oh, man. Let's talk about the projected lineup here on Fangraphs. Shortstop, Bo Bichette, come back for a bounce back year. First base, Vladdy. Left field, Santander. Right field, Springer. DH, Varsho. Behind the plate, Alejandro Kirk. Second base, newly added Andres Jimenez. Third base, Ernie Clement. And then in center field, Joey Loperfido. How do we feel about this lineup? Is there anyone on the bench or even in spring training that can crack this on opening day?
It'd be interesting with Varsho, first and foremost, guys, because he's coming back from that shoulder surgery late last season. One of the best defenders on the planet, incredible defender, has a little bit of pop. Right now, it's like a throwing. I feel like I'm talking about him like a pitcher all camp. Like he's trying to get up to certain velocities, certain distances so he can throw. Once he's back, that makes everything way, way easier. Because if he's not ready, they probably will have to roster Joey Loperfido to play center field, which you can handle, no problem. But Varsho is at another level altogether. If you have Santander, Varsho, Springer in the outfield, then you can start to chase offense a little bit more with maybe your DH spot or third base. Someone like Aurelvis Martinez, their number 3 prospect, Addison Barger, who was one of their top prospects, graduated last year. He's the ultimate, like, built like a linebacker. I've never seen someone in better shape. Swings a bat so hard it snaps, sometimes makes contact. Maybe he's a star, maybe it's gone quick. We'll see. But those two guys at least have incredible physical upside. And this lineup needs that. The Blue Jays have done a really good job, and I think of David Schneider, Ernie Clement, some of these guys, of acquiring or developing like big leaguers. Like big leaguers, sure. Spencer Horwitz, a good example of this that you guys know. Big leaguer. But they need some upside. And in terms of power, that likely comes from a Barger, from a Martinez. Alan Roden is kind of the prospect darling of camp as well, another outfielder. But this lineup's pretty set, guys. I think it really is pretty set. Just a matter of if Bo Bichette's leading off, if it's Jimenez, Will Wagner. I think eventually it is Roden, their prospect. But I kind of like Bichette up top to start the season. Just blitz a pitcher. Try to punch them in the face right away. Whatever. Yeah. Bo Bichette is going to put the first pitch in play a ton. He loves to swing the bat. He did not play baseball to watch pitches go by him, and that's cool. He can make contact on a lot of pitches. He's got an incredible swing when he's on. So when it works, it'll look awesome. When it doesn't work, the opposing pitcher will have 1 inning pitched, 5 pitches. Sure. They're off to a roll, but it's an okay lineup. Okay lineup that's definitely a bat away.
Yeah. Keegan, I had the pleasure of interning with the Blue Jays in 2016, and I spent a whole summer with Vladdy in his first year in the States down in Bluefield, West Virginia.
Beautiful Bluefield. What a ballpark, man.
Bowen Field.
Sharks. I love that place.
One of the most beautiful backdrops, I'll tell you. Yeah. And that summer, also, they drafted Bo Bichette. Bo Bichette did not make it up the Bluefield, but had the whole summer with Vladdy. He's very mature. Was very mature for his age at 16. Obviously, he's around his father and that family that has a lot of big leaguers in it. But we go back to the two guys that are on contract years, Vladdy and Bo Bichette. Two guys with pedigree, come from baseball families. If you had to pick one right now, who do you think has the best chance of re-signing with Toronto? And would you have a guess of what that contract might look like? I know Vladdy was looking at $600 million in that last rumor.
I think Vladdy is still the likeliest, but I think that can change a lot this year because I go back to 1 year today. This was, of course, a year ago already a big talking point in Toronto when these guys were 2 years out because everything, maybe too much, obviously, has just been dependent on Bo and Vladdy for years now. And a year ago, the conversation was, is Vladdy just a good hitter? Like, is he just like an 810 OPS dude, which is great, but it's not generational. It's not superstar. And is Bo Bichette actually the face of the franchise? Like, is he the guy that is going to ascend above Vladdy? He's always kind of been in the shadows. I think when Vladdy was the number one prospect, Bo was kind of that number 9, 10, 12 sort of dude. And a year ago, they were real close. So I'm open to that changing again this year. And I think it will when Bo has a big season. I really think he's going to. Yeah. But the money matters. Would you rather have Vladdy at $40 million or Bo at 25, 27, and what else you can get on top of that? It's an interesting conversation, especially when you're comparing a shortstop who might be a second baseman down the road with a first baseman who, my God, you better hit, or else the market is not going to love you a ton. So I do think that Vladdy still is the likeliest, but when you were talking about a number up in the range of 40, 42, maybe even more $1 million a year, if you're a first baseman, you have to be a perfect first baseman. And Vladdy at times has been that in 2021 and in the second half or maybe the last 4 or 5 months of last season. He's been pretty damn close to a perfect first baseman that you could dream of on your roster. But, man, you're betting on a lot there. And somehow the Blue Jays' biggest contract in franchise history is still George Springer, 6 years, $150, which doesn't make sense for a team with this much payroll, you know, which was interesting when we were talking to the GM, Ross Atkins, about Vladdy's contract, and he wouldn't get into offers, but he said, well, we offered him a record contract. And I'm holding my mic into the scrum, and I'm half asleep. It's 8 a.m., and I just kind of blurred out, what record? What are we talking about, a team record? And he said, yes. I thought, well, Jesus, I would hope so. I'd hope you offer him one. So they need to get that number up somehow. If either of these guys stay, they're going to blow it out of the water, but I'd still rank it Vladdy and Bo right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Vladdy probably has upper hand given that, you know, how much he means to this organization. But a right-handed first baseman, I feel like that $40 million a year is a lot. So you've got to, like you said, there's very little margin for error there. But let's get into the rotation real quick. Right now, projected, you got Gausman, Berrios, Bassett, Scherzer, and Bowden Francis. I like my nose out for the year. Jake Bloss was acquired last year. He's a name. Is this how you see the rotation cracking opening day? And are there any other names that we should watch for this year?
No, this is about it, guys. It'll go. I'd expect Berrios opening day, I think. He's always going to be the same dude. 31 starts, 3.59 ERA. Like, it's wonderfully boring, and it's perfect. Then I think you go Kevin Gausman, who I think is going to get some Cy votes this year. He looks amazing. He was battling a slow start to camp and dropping too much weight and a lot of things last year, and he still put up a 3.8, 3.9. Like, he's so good. Bassett's going to be okay. I think Max Scherzer, if you get 25 starts, sweet. Bowden Francis is interesting. He had those 2 near no-hitters late last year. Everybody loves the dude. There's a lot of expectations. If he can just give you innings and a low 4 ERA, good enough. Like, the bar for a number 5 starter in Major League Baseball is pretty low these days. As long as you don't screw up and burn the bullpen, cool. Beyond that, it gets a little weird. Now, Jake Bloss, he came over as a good prospect from Houston in that Yusei Kikuchi deal. He hasn't looked good this spring. If there was an injury today, he's not the guy stepping in. They'd probably let Ryan Yarbrough throw some slop for a few innings and just eat as much as he could.
Looking at Adam Mako, maybe?
Mako actually just had knee surgery on a meniscus, like a freak weird injury. I feel bad for the dude. He's had a lot of bad breaks. Yariel Rodriguez, right now, he started from last year. They're trying to shorten him up if they can. But again, you don't want to get yo-yoing a guy too much. So it's in a tough spot. Alek Manoah should be back by mid-late season. That'll be an option by then. But if they run into an injury or two, which is possible when you got a really old rotation, they're really good, but they're old. It could get scary quick for them. But they've got to hope that those 5 at least stick till midseason when Manoah or someone else can emerge.
Let's go into the bullpen because as all major league bullpens, forever rotating door, but they added some solid pieces here. Jeff Hoffman, Chad Green, Yimi Garcia, Nick Sandlin, Brendan Little, Zach Pop, Tommy Nance, and as you mentioned, Yariel Rodriguez in that longman role. How do you feel about this group? I know bullpens are up and down. Is there anyone in spring training that can make this group?
Last year sucked, so it can't be any worse. It's got to be better than last year for them. And bringing back Jimmy Garcia, I think, is a great start. Jeff Hoffman for Jordan Romano at their peaks, they're both real good closers. Cool. Great closer. That's a good start. Jimmy Garcia, man, like he's the type of dude that is going to be able to throw 90 when he's 70 years old. Like he's like February 12th, he's already huffing 98, dripping sweat. Like he's a classic. He's a throwback, and I really like the guy. The one that worries me right now is Eric Swanson. He is meeting with Dr. Keith Meister on Thursday, and you normally don't meet with Dr. Meister just to hang out, man. It's never a good meeting. Swanson's so important to this bullpen, and he was great down the stretch last year after he figured things out. That's worrying because then you're looking at a back end of Jeff Hoffman, Chad Green, Jimmy Garcia. Well, you have depth. They have lots of depth. The names that you mentioned, they can go 10, 11, 14 deep. But a lot of them are relievers who need to be filling in as the number 8, not the number 3 or 4 in line. That's why I think they're a high leverage arm or 2 away still. They've gotten better, absolutely. But they need someone to emerge. Maybe that's Yariel Rodriguez shortening back up like he did in Japan a couple of years ago. And that could be real fun, man, because he is intense as hell. Like he could be that guy who is scary coming out of the bullpen, like panting and dripping sweat and staring at you with crazy eyes. Like I think I love it when a personality matches a role. Yeah, I think he could really nail it. That kind of wild thing. Throwing strikes may be an issue, but we'll see. But I think this group is deeper, but they need depth in the back end. And losing Swanson's a real tough one if this is long term, because they've got to have some guys that can shorten it up. Not just post a 4 ERA and eat some innings, but like give them a 2.5 and really change some games. They might be short on that.
Let's talk about some prospects. We've already talked about, the big names like Aroldis Martinez, some like Jake Bloss, Adam Mako. But who are some other prospects that you're excited to follow this year? Not necessarily make an impact on this team, but follow throughout the system.
Yeah, the Jays need some success stories, man. I think they're number 27 in our MLB pipeline system rankings. And to be there with Vladdy and Bo maybe done after this year, like, yikes, man. Like, they need to find somebody. Alan Roden, their outfielder, consider him a AAA guy right now, but he is just the darling of spring training. Like, everyone loves the guy. He is way smarter than me and is one hell of a baseball player. High OBP guy. Like, the Blue Jays' dream prospect is pretty much Spencer Horwitz. Not a ton of power, but high on base, good contact. Like, that's the type of hitter they keep producing. Roden's that guy. But their farm system guys mirrors the conversations we have about every area of this team, which is that they have some solid players, but it needs upside. You need another Vladdy. At least you need another Bo. Like, Vladdies don't come on all that often, but you need to find another Bo Bichette. Arjun Namala, their first rounder from last year's shortstop, could be that guy. He's a guy
tank off the Pirates the other day.
Oh, dude, huge. And he is such a fascinating prospect, so strong physically. He's built kind of like an Olympic swimmer almost, like big, broad shoulders, but really in great shape and incredible power. But he's 19 years old. We'll see. Trey Savage, their first rounder from last year, The right-hander, I think he can move very quickly, maybe get to Double-A by the end of this season. But again, we're kind of talking about a gap in between the waves of prospects getting to Toronto. They're going to need some of these guys to be ready by next year, period. And really, the Blue Jays farm system right now, it kind of spills into that crowded depth group of Addison Barger, Aurelvis Martinez, Leo Jimenez. It's an infield depth group that, again, lots of guys, but they need upside. So this is a big year for their farm system. Every pitcher in the organization, it felt like, had elbow surgery last year. It was a brutal, brutal year for them. Yeah, they added lots of guys at the trade deadline, but more guys that I would rank in the 20 to 40 range, not really ceiling raisers. So in every aspect, man, this team needs to raise its ceiling, and starts in the farm system because it has not been pretty.
Keegan, what about a pick to click? What guy on this roster right now is going to help take this team to the next level and compete in the AL East?
Man, it's an easy answer, but I think it's all about Bo, honestly. Like last year, he had that sub 600 OPS. He had multiple calf injuries that never seemed to go away. And it was also Bo's first time experiencing real failure. And when that doesn't happen until you're in the big leagues, that can be tough. These guys are the best kid on their team when they're 8, 12, 20. And when you finally get humbled in the big leagues, it sucks. I think Bo handled it fairly well, but he is his own biggest critic, and it's not close. Like, he is tough on himself. So I think him coming back this year, like in camp, he looks incredible. He looks fantastic this year. I think it's going to get back to who he is, the guy that led the AL in hits for a couple of seasons, a guy who can hit 300, steal the odd base. We saw today he hit a ball right out of the stadium. It was huge. I think that Bo, and I almost hesitate because I sound like a crappy GM telling a fan base, like, no, the big trade deadline edition was actually that injured guy coming back. You know?
Yeah.
But
that's
Bo,
our go-to.
yeah, there we go, Pittsburgh. But Bo going from who he was last year, a 590-something OPS, up to a 815, 830 OPS guy that's hitting for power and changing this lineup up top, that's a few wins right there all by itself. And the Blue Jays need that. If Bo does not turn this around, the Jays don't go anywhere, period. But I think they really need him. And the other name I'd point to would be Alejandro Kirk, their catcher. I think he's getting some offense back. Really good defender, but I think can be one of the better catchers in baseball. He is not going to steal a base. He's not going to beat out a ground ball in his life. But if he's driving the ball, it's a little prettier. And it's those secondary sources of offense. Vladdy's going to do it. Santander's going to do it. But they need somebody else. Because if there's nobody else, it turns into last year again, where I don't even think they had a home run a game. It was like 155 homers. It was a strange team to watch, a team that should have been hitting for more power, but they seemed more obsessed with hitting 4 singles in a row. It was just not exciting baseball.
Before we let you go, Keegan, let's get a 2025 prediction. Could be player-oriented or team-oriented. How do you give us something here for the 2025 Blue Jays?
2025 Blue Jays. I think that on the player side, I think Gausman gets some Cy votes. I think that Vladdy has just a massive walk year and maybe
contract year.
Yeah, still doesn't even get what he was looking for, but hey, have fun with it, man. I think that the Blue Jays do just enough to stay in the race until July 31st, and then they go nuts at the trade deadline because there's a lot of factors leading into this, and the more human factor is people's jobs, man. This front office has been here for 8, 9, 10 years now. They haven't won a playoff game. They live in reality. They've got to know that this might be the last crack. If you are within 5 games of a playoff spot, sell off every prospect I've ever heard of. Whatever. Take a run at it. I think this is the year that finally, kind of up against the wall, the Jays have to make a huge push at the deadline, and I think they will. I don't think they're going to run away with anything, man. That's not going to happen. But I think that the staff will be enough. I think that Kevin Gausman will be incredible this year. And if they can do just enough to get to that deadline and push in, I always think of those, that was the 2015 Jays where they were kind of around 500, then boom, too low price. Like those crazy trades came out of nowhere. That's what this team has needed for a long time. Something with a little spice, and there's never going to be a better time, because if they don't do it this year, I think I'm interviewing all new people next year.
Next year, for sure. For sure. Appreciate you coming on, Keegan. If you happen to run across him in Florida, give Alex Stumpf a really hard time for us. Other than that, man, hope to see you around Pittsburgh if you're here, or even in Toronto. We made the trip to Toronto last year. We love that city. So hope to see you around.
You got it, fellas. Appreciate you having me.
Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates, or the steak by the plates and they